to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he says, all who spend in good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn his reward. Don't forget the oppressed. And when you go to sleep at night.
Bismillah walhamdulillah wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulillah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. A'udhu billahi min shururi anfusina wa min sayyiati a'malina. Man yahdihillahu fala mudilla lah wa man yudlil fala hadiya lah. Dear viewers, assalamu alaikum and a very good evening to all of you, and welcome once again to one of the exciting sessions of another episode of A Time to Please Allah. We are coming in live from Al Huda Studios located in Dubai Marina, Sofo, Dubai, the United Arab Emirates. The reason for being tonight live on air is to have a discussion on a very important and salient topic of today's life, and it is incumbent upon us to at least ponder upon it if we cannot work and definitely think about it, but definitely keep it as part of our thoughts all the time round. And the topic is positive thinking. We today would like to discuss positive thinking in various aspects of the deen and the dunya. I'm your host Irfan Thanvi, and we are blessed today to be joined with Brother Muhammad Nubi, who needs no introduction. Ustaz Muhammad Nubi, assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Ustaz, to begin the discussion, I would just like to ask you, when it comes to positivity or positive thinking, what strikes your mind to begin with?
Jazakallah khair, and thank you very much, Sheikh Irfan. And indeed, this is a very important subject because it does shape our mental positions on a daily basis, and it also shapes our actions. So when we talk about positive thinking, this is something really that is, I think, critical for us as Muslims and as human beings in general, because as we said, this also has to do with our outlook and how we look at things in our life, our outlook and our perceptions in life. Before I go, though, before I continue on, if this is subject, if you don't mind, I just want to give what we call a shout out or
Please,
say hello to
please.
One of my students, a young man, Khalifa Nasser, mashallah. He saw me today. He says, I've seen you on TV before, mashallah. I said, he explained to me one of the programs that he saw me on. And so I told him I would be on TV tonight, and I wanted him to watch to see the program. And the reason I'm doing this really is because when our young people are engaged in learning, in learning Islamic knowledge and in just expanding their horizons, I think this is very important. So I think it's very important to recognize all of our youth, particularly that that are engaged in viewing these kinds of programs and wanting to better themselves. Now, on the topic of positive thinking, as you said, this is a very, very important topic. What comes to my mind is a very common saying: is your cup half empty or is it half full? How do you view that? And one of the questions that perhaps may come to one's mind is, how does one know whether or not he or she thinks positively or not about things? Because I think most people, in my observation, most people are not aware of how they think. They're not aware of their own thinking process, or whether it's positive or negative or whatever it may be. Just give you a couple of examples. One of the things, if we want to maybe do a self-assessment about our own positiveness or negativeness, as it were, is to watch the words that we use. And if we use the words can't, don't, not, these kinds of negative words, in a lot of our conversation, and particularly as we talk about the future, then it is likely that our outlook may be more negative than it is positive. But if we use the words that we can, it is possible, inshallah. Of course, everything is in the hands and by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but we have hope in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for all that is good. This is why we say in our dua as Muslims, Rabbana atina fid dunya hasana wa fil akhirah hasana wa qina adhaban nar. Allah, give us the good in this life. You know, give us the good in this life and in the hereafter, and save us, of course, from the fire. May Allah save us all from the hellfire. Ameen. So I think about that. I think about how we really look at life, how we look at things. Do we look at it from a positive standpoint? Do we have hope for the best? You know, do we have hope for the best? And I think one of the things, I think there are kind of two aspects we can approach this conversation, this discussion on, is one from the Islamic standpoint of husnul dhan, you know, in terms of how, meaning how do we, what is our outlook and our on situations or even on people? Do we have husnul dhan? Do we think the best of situations and the best of things, or do we think the worst of things and the worst of people? You know, and sometimes and oftentimes, if you listen to people carefully, when things are being discussed or a person is being discussed or a situation, many people think the very worst situation, not the best situation. And we shouldn't think of the best and we shouldn't think of the worst situation without knowledge.
True.
Without knowledge. Because sometimes we think of the worst situation or in a negative aspect when we really don't have a reason to think of it in that negative way. And we always have to keep in mind that things aren't always as they seem. Things aren't always as they seem. And there may be other things that are happening or other things that are going on, other things that have happened that we just don't have the knowledge of. You know. So number one is what is our cup or our glass? You know, is it half empty? Or is it half full? How do we approach life in that regard? Do we approach it maybe thinking that we can't do things, that things are always going to be difficult, or that things are going to be impossible? Or do we think that there is a way, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will open up a way for us to accomplish the good things that we want to accomplish in our lives? And that if He does not, then we know that this is something that is good for us as well.
Amazing. Yes. That's a brilliant intro to our topic. But just to compare and contrast, Sheikh.
Sure.
Let's compare and contrast myself with you and yourself with me. You were born and raised in a society which believes in dare to dream, go for the kill.
Yes.
You see, nothing's impossible. I was raised in a society here at Jaziratul Arab where there were always restrictions. Don't do this and don't do that. Don't think this, don't think that. And your perception of life has been always larger than life. You've been thinking larger than life, even when you were not a Muslim.
Yes.
To say an instant. Alhamdulillah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala azza wa jal granted you hidayah and you came towards the deen of Islam. And this is a very important message for our viewers as well, that Brother Muhammad Nubi spent a good number of years not in Islam, but alhamdulillah, today he enjoys the oneness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in practicing the Islamic monotheism. Now, coming to that aspect of stuff,
yes,
like you said, the Islamic and the worldly point of view. So, you just now said that we should refrain from words used like don't or can't or hopefully not or things like that. Rather, our perception should be overall positive. So, what about, let's say, situations or emergencies where it's demanded of us, unfortunately, that we have to think a bit critical or a bit negative about the subject? Then what about it? And we can go into the specifics if you may want me to. But let's say in a situation like we have the example from the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam's life. Unfortunately, an incident happened where Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu ta'ala anha, na'udhu billah astaghfirullah, was accused of her chastity, which was wrong, absolutely wrong. Terrible accusation on her chastity, in which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala cleared in Surah An-Nur, but it was all about positive and negative thinking. So would you like to comment on that?
Sure, I would like to comment on that very much. Two things. So number one, particularly as Muslims, we have to be aware of the shaitan, of the devil, you know, of the evil thoughts, you know, that and the evil forces, and this is what we call the shaitan, that attempts to influence us to think in negative ways. Now, the thing in this case, in this particular situation, or in situations like that, we should first analyze who is this person we're talking about? What is the nature and character of that particular person? So if I know you, and I know you to be righteous and to be virtuous and to be honest, do I have a reason to think anything else? Now, even if I see you in a situation that may look, that may be abnormal, that may be an unusual situation, that yes, maybe it may cause one to think, is there something going on? But do we know that something went on at all? That would be, untoward or un-Islamic, or, So we don't know that. So this is why, again, this is the aspect of husnul dhan, is putting the best light on things. Because instead of saying this happened, we could say maybe that happened. Instead of saying this negative thing, I think that negative thing happened, because the only thing we can say is I think maybe it happened, because we don't have knowledge and proof that it happened, because maybe we saw that, or we that situation, this man and this woman in that situation. We can't say other than maybe something happened. But we could also say maybe something didn't happen. Maybe there was a reason for these people to be in that kind of a situation. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Yeah. So in that case, of course, Aisha radiallahu anha was left behind. She was left behind. So there was no choice, and no good choice. We certainly couldn't have left her there in the desert. So she had to be given transport there. So that thought could have come to mind as well. So this is why, as Muslims, in particular when we're among each other and someone is making these kinds of leaps, if you will, in terms of judgment, someone, inshallah, should say, brothers, please, let's have husnul dhan. Maybe there's another explanation, for why this is happening, because we know these people to be honorable and good people. Someone said to me one time, about someone being a liar or lying. And I said, I have no reason to believe that person is a liar, because that person has never lied to me. I've never known that person to lie. So I have no reason to lie, to think of a person as a liar, unless that person has been known to be a liar, for instance, in terms of general speaking, or had that person, I've experienced that, with myself. So one of the things is we have choices. We can choose how we think about a situation.
True.
Particularly in the absence of complete knowledge. And most of the time, we rush to judgment about things and situations because, as a result of not having complete knowledge, rather than waiting, holding our tongues, where the Prophet ﷺ said, speak good or keep quiet. Speak good or keep quiet. This is something positive, by the way. This is a positive action. In other words, to keep quiet, rather than saying something that is not good, then just keep quiet until we have knowledge, certain knowledge of the facts of that nature. And of course, we know in this case, in the case of Aisha radiallahu anha, Allah himself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, cleared her, of course, of all of these, of what the people, were charging her with.
Exactly. Jazakumullah khairan, Ustaz. As we progress into this discussion, Sheikh, there is a lot to do with our own mindset. I mean, somebody did ask me this question, and I was quite perplexed in the beginning, but then I finally said I gotta answer this person. And that was that we are talking about positive thinking, but what about positive actions? So my answer was fairly simple to that person, that positive thought is going to develop positive actions. What do you say about
This is absolutely true. There's a very famous book written, at least in the West. It's called As a Man Thinketh, So Is He.
Okay.
As a man thinketh, so is he. See, because one of the things that we have to understand the nature of the human mind. We have to understand the nature of the subconscious aspect of our minds. And what we put in our minds, and in particular into the subconscious parts of our mind, is what directs our actions. So let's, for instance, I mean, if we think about a particular thing, no matter what it is, maybe it's having lunch, having dinner, some food, or maybe a woman or a man, or whatever it is that we may be thinking about, or money, whatever we think about most of the time dictates for the better part what our actions are. And our actions will be toward that particular thing. So if a person is obsessed, for instance, with a particular activity or a particular type of thinking, then it is based upon what kinds of thoughts are going, or he's allowing either to be fed in his mind, or that he's feeding his own subconscious to move in. So actions, yes, positive actions are very, very important. But how are we going to have positive actions if we don't have positive thinking and positive thoughts? You can't have there are going to be one or two things. Either our thinking, is it going to be positive or going to be negative? There's not going to be much in between. So what would dictate the actions would be the type of thinking, that we have. If I'm thinking about salah, if I'm in the remembrance of Allah, the Prophet ﷺ said that the greatest force in life, and I don't know if there's hadith either from the ayah from the Quran, I think it's from the Quran, that the greatest force in life is the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's nothing greater than that, than to remember Allah, because there's nothing greater than Allah.
Exactly.
You see? So the more that our tongues are wet with the remembrance of Allah, thinking of his names and his attributes and his majesty and his glory, as well as his punishment, and his love for us, by the way. His love, because Allah loves, and Allah loves us. So if we think about Allah's love, for instance, if we're constantly remembering or thinking about how Allah loves us and the good that he wants for us, this is positive, that he wants good for us, and the reward for doing that good, then this will be a motivation for our actions. This will be a motivation for action. And also what it will also help us to overcome the difficult and the trials in our life. The trials in our life. Because as Allah says in the Quran, surely after difficulty there is relief.
Definitely.
Surely after difficulty there is relief. Yes, exactly right. So what will keep me going? What will keep us going as human beings? What will keep us going as believers in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, even when it becomes difficult? It's because we know of the promise of Allah. We know what's at the end. We know what we're really working for in terms of our ultimate goal. The ultimate goal.
You're referring to the hope.
Yeah, in terms of the hope of Allah. Yes. I mean, it's just like developing in a business, or you're going to school and you want to get an A, or you want to graduate and you want to get your bachelor's or your master's, or whatever it is that you're trying to achieve. What keeps you going is that you see the end. You know that there is an end, a result of your hard work, of your hard study, of your steadfastness, of your patience, of your perseverance, all of these things, no matter how difficult it may be. You see? So it's that mindset, as you said, it is the mindset that we have in order to achieve the goals that we wanted to have. If we say, no, I can't do this. Again, I can't. If we say, I can't do that, it's too hard. Well, no, then if we say we can't, then we can't. If we say we can, we can. Because once I say I can't, then I've already given up.
True.
But once I say I can, now I'm giving myself the possibility. I'm giving myself some hope. Because surely if we don't try, we'll never get the positive outcome.
Absolutely.
We can never hope to get the positive outcome. True. And from the Islamic standpoint, for Muslim, we know that even those things that we strive for and that we put effort for, we know that the result is with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we know that even if Allah doesn't give it for us here in this life, that he'll give it for us in the life to come. So the Muslim has a total aspect for that. But in general, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us that which we strive for.
Subhanallah.
Allah gives us that which we strive for. I'd like to give you a quick example for this in terms of, particularly of the good things that we want. My family wanted to come in and move to the Muslim land.
Okay.
For a long time before we even came here. Okay. All right. We didn't know really anything about, Dubai or the United Arab Emirates or anything in terms of this part of the world. We just knew as new Muslims in America, having a family in America, that we wanted to spend some time in a Muslim society. We didn't know where. From the point that we started this mental process, it was 10 years before we landed here. It was 10 years before we landed here. So this is the hope in Allah, the hope in Allah's mercy in desiring and working and moving toward and making a plan. Of course, it can't be just a dream.
Definitely.
It can start as a dream, but then there also has that dream has to be, transformed and into the actual work, into the actual, material things that actually bring about that particular reality. So the point is what do we fix in our mind? And this was so fixated in our minds that we wanted to live in the land of the Muslims, and we didn't know where, but we just asked Allah to open that way for us. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala opened that way for us.
Alhamdulillah.
But it first came from a thought.
Definitely.
That light was a thought.
Definitely.
This light in this studio was a thought. It was a thought.
True.
It was a thought. It was an idea that maybe this could happen. And it said that the one who invented this Mr. Thomas Edison said he went through thousands. Some say 5,000. 5,000 experiments until he got to this particular point. And they would ask him, why do you keep doing this? You keep failing. No, he says, I keep succeeding. I'm continuing to succeed. How are you continuing to succeed? You're on the 4,000th experiment. He says, I'm 4,000 closer to the answer.
Wow.
I'm 4,000 trials and tests until the reality of what I'm trying to achieve, because I believe I can achieve it. It's about belief. And you see, when we say Allahu Akbar, Allah is the greatest. Allah has power over all things. And I want to go back and mention, and if you don't mind, touch on something you said in the beginning, of the program here. About, of course, I grew up in America, of course. And America is the land of the free, the home of the brave, and all this kind of stuff. And yes, and people are free to think.
Exactly.
And think big. But this is not outside of Islam.
It's not.
No. The early Muslims, it was Islam that opened up their minds.
Exactly.
The early Muslims, for instance, even before the Europeans went to the West, they knew that the earth was round and not flat. The Europeans wouldn't go. The Europeans were afraid to get on the ships. Why? Because their understanding was that the earth was flat, and therefore they will fall off the edge of the earth. The Muslims knew from the Quran and from the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah that the earth was not flat, that the earth was round shape. Of course, we know it's not completely round, but based upon the ayat of the Quran. Yes, exactly right. So they knew to do that. So they ventured out, not knowing really what was on the other side, but they knew that whatever was there, it was created by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And of course, their goal was to go and to spread the word of Allah, to wherever and whatever was on this earth. But again, we're talking about did anything restrict them? No. The only thing that restricts us, and I don't even like the word restriction, so let's discuss this a little bit. But the only thing that we are guided, let's put it that way, we're guided by the Quran and by the example of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, because we know that this is the best, that the Quran is guidance for sure, without doubt. So we stay within that parameters, but it's not narrow, it's very wide. I heard one sheikh say one time, he said, in Islam, alhamdulillah, the boulevards of Islam are very wide.
They are.
They're not very strict. Because think about it, how many things are haram in Islam? Very few.
Very few.
Very few things are haram in Islam.
Specific things.
They're very specific things. Khamr, wine and alcohol, gambling, indecent relationships or without marriage. But these are few things. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us replacement.
Exactly. He does.
It gives us replacement.
He does.
Instead of wine, you can have all other kinds of drinks. Thousands of types of drinks that gives you great pleasure and is beneficial to your body. Instead of khamr, instead of khanzir, instead of the pig or the pig meat, the pork. Yes, exactly right. There are hundreds of other kinds of meat. There's chicken and there's all kinds of fish and fowl and all kinds of things of the sea. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, true.
Instead of having indecent relationships, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives us marriage, and even for men, He gives us marriage to 4 women if you like, no problem. It's okay.
True.
So alhamdulillah. So the point is that Islam, no one should think, and I think a lot of people, it may be even some Muslims, think of Islam in this kind of a narrow, constricted way. But there are many things we can do. Because I think there's a fiqh principle, and I'm sure you know best than I do, Sheikh, is that things are halal unless it's specifically haram.
Absolutely.
Things are permissible unless it's specifically impermissible.
So we can, that's the words from the Holy Quran. Having said, you literally hit the jackpot in your conversation. Alhamdulillah. Meaning, my next question to you would be regarding the same arena, the situation in the United States right now. There are brothers and sisters over there, literally, and who have been writing to us that they feel that they, because of the Islamophobic environment at this moment in time in America, which has stirred up a great deal in the past few months, as you rightly know,
Yes.
they feel that they are back in the Meccan era, and their challenges are similar to the earlier Muslims. Now, for many of those brothers and sisters, and we have in writing from them, their questions are how to think positive about the situation, about the people around them, about what's happening to them. What's your idea about that?
Yes.
Keeping in mind that you
Sure.
yourself come from a U.S.
Sure.
background and you can shed some light on it.
Well, number one, for the Muslim, first of all, we have to always keep in mind that nothing happens without Allah's knowledge. Nothing has happened without Allah's knowledge. So this is all a part of the plan and the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so we have to always think in that, from the standpoint that, okay, there's some good here somewhere. There's some opportunity here somewhere. There's an opportunity here. So yes, it is difficult. Sometimes there's many difficulties in these kinds of situations. So we're not going to make light of it and to say that it is easy for some people. Now, I do want to make one statement because in terms of what's happening in America in that regard, just in terms of balance and perspective, what we see, and there are some things, there's definitely some Islamophobia, but there are just a few people who have the mic. True. You know, and they're able to say negative things about Islam. And there are a few incidences, and there's true, where people are doing things to some Muslims and, you know, pulling the hijab of some of the sisters. And even one cab driver who's Muslim got, you know, some punched. This does happen. This is happening now in America, unfortunately. This is not happening to the majority of the Muslims or by the majority of the non-Muslims to the Muslims. So I want to make that clear, you know. So I don't think someone should think, oh, I can't go to the America. I'm afraid to go to the America because as a Muslim, then I'm going to be in trouble. No, that's not the case at all. We should not think like that. These are, in terms of the total population, these are isolated incidents, unfortunate incidents. Now, the Islamophobia in general is real. Now, I was talking about you know, some of the physical things, but the Islamophobia that is throughout the media is very, very much real. And this is not isolated at all. You know, so I wanted to make that clear because that is influencing the mind of the people. And talking about, you know, positive thinking and negative thinking influencing actions, those people that have done these things, that have done some of these violent acts towards the Muslim, are doing it as a result of the thinking that they have that has been put in their mind by the one who is spewing the Islamic phobia rhetoric.
Exactly.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They ordinarily would not do that. They ordinarily would not do that. I'll give you a prime example.
Please.
After September the 11th, there was very little backlash against the Muslims in America, by the way. There was some people, but most people became curious, what is this Islam? Who are these Muslims? But no one was making these kinds of, statements, Islamic phobic statements, and these statements that are really stirring up, you know, these kind of hatred to the Muslims until just recently, as a matter of fact. Now we're seeing this guy. So really, and this is just my view, this is my view alone, and my observation, it is worse now than it was after 9/11. Now, let's look at the positive side of this. Look at the opportunity. The opportunity is for dawah. The opportunity is to spread Islam.
Exactly.
The opportunity is to say, listen, you know, I can understand how you feel that way. I can understand if someone comes to you negative. Listen, I understand. How do we understand how they feel that way? Because of the negative messages that they've been hearing about Islam. True. And that a lot of people have, you know, have felt that way. But what we found, it's called the feel, felt, found method, by the way. This is a kind of an approach of how to overcome the objections of people. So listen, I understand how you feel. Many people have felt the same way about Muslims and Islam when they've heard the kind of things that you likely have heard, you know, in the media, you know, about Muslims, the negative things. Exactly. But what people have found when they really got to know Muslims and got to know what Islam is, it changed, for most people, their total outlook on Islam and about Muslims, which is absolutely true. Because many people, in spite of this Islamophobia, these negative messages, are coming to Islam. Why? Because either from Muslims themselves who are engaging people, you know, about Islam, or people becoming curious about Islam and beginning to think positive. Now we're back to the husnul dhan. From the non-Muslim person, okay? They're thinking now, well, can that be true? Because see, the part is, how do we really think? If I think positively, I'm thinking to myself, all of these people can't be terrorists. Else we'd have lots of killings in America by Muslims towards non-Muslims. There are about 3, maybe 6 million Muslims in America. How many non-Muslims in America are being killed by Muslims? None. None. So if one is thinking, one to say, no, they can't be terrorists. That can't be true. Maybe this is an isolated incident. Or one could look at it another way. Do you know how many murders there are in America every day?
No idea.
No. There are about every day murders. Now we're talking about murders. There are at least 90.
Wow.
At least 90 every day.
Subhanallah.
So at the end of the week, that's 630.
Stop.
Most of the people that commit those those murders, 99.9%, would identify themselves as Christians. So would I say that all Christians are murderers?
Not at all.
Of course I wouldn't say all Christians are murderers. Of course not. I would say that the people that committed those acts are criminals. That's what we have to say. Who may have called themselves murderers. During the eras of the 40s, the 30s and 40s and the 50s and the 60s, even when I was growing up, and we had this group called the Ku Klux Klan. They're still around, But they used the Bible and Christianity to lynch black people. And to cause all kinds of problems and discrimination and segregation, and many people did that, and they used the Bible, they used the church in order to promote that. But did we say, or did anyone say, that Christianity itself as a religion is a religion of discrimination, is a religion of terrorism, because the Ku Klux Klan were and are terrorists. They are a terrorist organization. I mean, if you define the word terrorist. So my point is how we look at things. Is this husnul done? Do we think the best of the situation, and do we look at things in context, and we put things in proper perspective?
Jazakumullah khairan, Ustaz. We have to take a quick break here. Dear viewers, there is our telephone numbers on the screen. You can view them, and definitely we would like you to join in after this break and join us with this exciting discussion. Assalamu alaikum.
To please Allah, a chance to gain reward, I will spend on you, he says.
TV commercials motivate viewers into immediate action and to sway consumer loyalty from one brand or service to the other. That's why we're here for you, to help you sell your products and services by using creative ideas that bring life into your own TV commercial. Advertise your business and branded products and services on Huda TV. We will offer you fast-paced and energetic 30-second affordable TV spots. Advertise on Huda TV, acquire fresh customers, and stay within your budget. For more info or to receive a quote, please send your inquiries to advert@Huda TV. Huda TV.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. قالوا أجئتنا لتأفكنا عن آلهتنا فأتنا بما تعدنا إن كنت من الصادقين.
له ملك السماوات والأرض وإلى الله ترجع الأمور.
فلما رأوه عارضا مستقبل أوديتهم قالوا هذا عارض ممطرنا بل هو ما استعجلتم به.
أخا عاد إذ أنذر قومه بالأحقاف وقد خلت النذر من بين يديه ومن خلفه ألا تعبدوا إلا الله إني أخاف عليكم عذاب يوم عظيم.
فيهما عينان نضاختان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان. فيهما فاكهة ونخل ورمان فبأي آلاء ربكما تكذبان.
Sent from Allah to an angel, then first of creation. A time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, he said.
Assalamu alaikum once again, dear viewers, and again a very good evening. Coming back to the discussion, Ustaz Muhammad Nubi, and you took us into a very good retrospective, to be honest. Alhamdulillah. And as they say in English, our age is retrospective, and definitely these things come up again. And definitely in the United States of America or in the West, we have many great examples of great sacrifices made by Muslims in the past. And even the common man acknowledges it. One of the great examples is brother Allah Yarham Malcolm X, Malik al-Shahbaz. May Allah be pleased with him and grant him Jannatul Firdaus.
Ameen.
And even from a dunya perspective, people of like Martin Luther King Jr. and Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and many others like that have played a very important role in establishing positive thinking,
Yes.
our topic. Now, in this part of the world and elsewhere in the predominantly Muslim countries where Muslim populations are more, somehow or the other we are faced with a lot of negativity in our work environments, in our social environments, in our marriages, in our society at large. Primarily in the subcontinent, in the Far East, many things happen which are obviously not part of the deen, but definitely have engulfed people due to cultural reasons. And normally when you investigate on such a cultural thing, it dates back to some other religion or some other tradition rather than the deen of Islam. So what's the hope in here? What should be the course of action? What should be the way of tolerance? Let's begin with tolerance, if you may say. That how should I tolerate other fellow beings in a Muslim society? What's your take on that?
Thank you very much. Bismillah, alhamdulillah. Yeah, this is a very, very important here, the point that you made, and how do we approach these kinds of situations in our daily lives. And a lot of this has to do with the culture, of course, that we live in and the societies that have been formed. Now, as far as the Muslim societies that are maybe stuck, we are stuck only because we have really left some very prime, some of the very basic teachings of Islam. Yeah, I mean, this is really, and I know that's the general statement that you hear a lot of course, as Muslims, we talk about our shuyukh, our scholars, say, listen, we must go back to the deen. And this is true, meaning we must educate ourselves about, how we should live our lives, and we often are talking about, it's not just the ritual acts of Islam. Most of us, alhamdulillah, I think most of us, I would like to think, we're very familiar with some of the ritual aspects of Islam, the salah and the fasting and the zakah and things like that, and we should be, we certainly should be, and we should be. But it doesn't stop there. Those ritual aspects of Islam are, if we are knowledgeable of them correctly and we practice them correctly, are to lead us to how we are interacting in the greater society, with our fellow human beings, how we should be doing that. And so, and again, I think a lot of this has to do with how our societies have evolved to. What many of them have evolved to. And a lot of that has to do with the leadership in the societies and, of course, or the breakdown in the society in general. And I think when you look at unfortunately, many of our Muslim nations that are, of course, now suffering from war and all of these things that are going on, and obviously it puts people under great burden, under great pressure psychologically and emotionally. And it's very difficult under such circumstances to think in a positive way. Not when you have these kinds of pressures and these burdens on you that are more than just the normal pressures and burdens of one's life. So we talk about organizations in particular, and I'm very much interested in the culture of organizations. The culture of an organization, whether it's a positive or a negative, or whether it's open or whether it's restrictive, is based upon the leaders of that organization. it's the leadership in the organizations that set the culture of the organization.
Sure.
So if you look at organizations, whether they are companies or schools or businesses or even society, the greater large, in a larger sense, look at the leaders and what are the leaders talking about? What is their message? Are they repressive leaders? Are they oppressive leaders? And, there's repression, there's oppression. Or are they the type of leaders, and again, I'm not talking about leaders of societies, let's bring it down to just the basic everyday about organizations, for instance, and the workplaces that we're in, and even more so if we just talk about the micro level, then we can look at how are they, what is their mindset? Do they come from a positive standpoint or a negative standpoint? Are they open? Do they think the best, and do they want the best? See, this is part of the key as well. What do I want for my brother? The Prophet ﷺ said, and this one particular hadith kind of sums it all up, I think. The Prophet ﷺ said that the Muslim is one who wants for his brother. He says he does not truly believe until he wants for his brother what he wants for himself.
So, absolutely.
He doesn't.
Absolutely.
So what do I want for myself? Most of us want the best for ourselves. So we should also want the best of others. Now, what would keep me from holding you back from getting the best? It could be one or two things. Maybe I have the wrong idea about Allah. Maybe I have the wrong idea about Allah because maybe I think.
Meaning you're not educated about Allah.
Yes, exactly. Meaning maybe I think that if Allah gives that person, there won't be left any for me. A'udhu billah. And some people think like this, that there won't be enough. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us that really, that, He has power over everything, and He could give all of us everything that we ask for if He wanted to, and that would not diminish His store, if you will. Allah's store is vast, if we want to put it in those contexts. Allah doesn't run out. Allah doesn't run out of inventory. Allah can give to everyone. So whatever He asks for, without diminishing anything from anybody else. So if I start thinking from a negative standpoint, that Irfan, if I let Irfan, or if Irfan has more, if the Sheikh has more than me, then there won't be any for me. If he gets that, then there won't be any for me. This is the wrong ideas, is the wrong knowledge, the incorrect knowledge that we have about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is that Allah gives to whomever He pleases. And so we should want the best for our brother, and with the hope that, alhamdulillah, if Allah has allowed you, inshallah, Allah will allow me to have as well. And this is the way that we should think about things. And again, talking about the positive thinking. Because let's say, for instance, you're looking for a parking space, because here in Dubai, there are lots of congestion and parking, and oftentimes, it's hard to find a parking space sometimes. And so somebody in front of you, he goes in and he finds a parking space. Do you curse that person? How did he get that parking space? You should say, alhamdulillah. We should say, alhamdulillah, that person got a parking space. Inshallah, now there's one for me.
Inshallah. Exactly.
You want to get married. Your friend found a good wife or a good husband. You shouldn't be jealous or upset. Oh, no, now there's not going to be a wife or husband for me. What do you mean? Allah has created one for you. If He wants one for you, then that wasn't the wife or husband for you.
Exactly.
The one for you is whichever one Allah has determined for you, whether now or in Jannah. You understand? But we should be happy for that person. We should say, alhamdulillah. Then that should give us hope. If I'm looking for a job, okay, I need a job. But, you found a job before I found a job. Should I be unhappy? So, no, Sheikh found a job before I got a job. This is not good. No, I should say, alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah, Sheikh found a job. My friend found a job. Inshallah, that makes me hopeful that I will find at the same time. You see, it's the way that we look at it. And to know that Allah has power over all things. And what's today doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same tomorrow. And one of the things that we should do, one of the things I think we should do, and one of the things that I do for myself, I always try to look forward to the next day. If Allah allows me to get there. That I say, oh Allah, if you get me, bring good out of this next day. Because we don't know what the next day will bring.
Exactly.
We have no knowledge what the next day will bring. It could bring some fortune, it could bring some misfortune. But whatever it brings, It's by the will of Allah
قدر
subhanahu wa
الله
ta'ala.
ما شاء الله.
And it is good for us in either case. You know, the Prophet ﷺ said, you know, when some good happens to the Muslim, he says, Alhamdulillah. He's pleased and he praises Allah. But when some misfortune falls him, he is patient and he's patient with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And he still, Alhamdulillah. Why? Because, as the Prophet ﷺ said, not a prick happens by the thorn of a tree to the Muslim that there's not some barakah, there's not some good and some benefit in it some way or another, if nothing for the removal of sin. So it's all about, the point is about the knowledge. What knowledge? So if our knowledge is weak, then we are more than likely to fall into these kinds of despairs, into this kind of a negative thinking, that my life has no meaning, all of these things that unfortunately that people think about. And we won't have the hope, the proper hope in Allah that we really should have, and in the hope in our situations, and in the determination to move forward. We should see ourselves moving out of negative situations into positive situations.
Jazakumullah khairan, Ustaz Muhammad Nubi. I wish we could continue, but dear viewers, we are really short of time. Thank you very much, Ustaz Muhammad, for joining us. And dear viewers, the message for tonight is that wherever you are, whichever country you're residing in, to be honest, I know there are some non-Muslim viewers also, so whichever religion or creed you belong to, positive thinking has to be the forefront of our thinking and of our thought process. And definitely Almighty Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses those who always think positive, and definitely they will be the first beneficiaries of His mercy. By this, we all take your leave. Jazakumullah khairan for joining us, and once again, thank you very much for viewing our show, and look forward to see you next week, same time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Time to please Allah, a chance to gain reward. I will spend on you, He says, on who spend in good cause. Good deeds are opportunities, sparkling bright and true, raising you in the sight of Allah and adorning Al-Jannah for you. So rush to earn His reward, don't forget